So instead of doing some sort of intro, which is so artificial, I'm just going to keep talking because I just pressed record while we were
Yeah.
already talking. And I think it
Mm.
is a little bit more natural because it's not like I'm like some radio host. Um,
Hmm.
but we're talking about the Brothers Karamazov today, and I was making the point that I just got off an unrecorded seminar with a friend of ours, George, who had some really deep questions about sin that he was asking of Augustine in City of God. And I was making the case that this book, Brothers Karamazov, does a much better, like not only representation of sin and terrible situations that it just rubs your effing face in over and over again. Um, but it if one wants to ask, I think the deepest pragmatic slash intellectual questions of what sin is, this book certainly gets into it. And why is this your favorite book of all the ones we've been reading, Justin?
Well, as far as a representation of sin, like I think they're all paraded out at some point. And especially right in the intro, you get, all kinds of characters. There's not a, well, in Alyosha, I guess, but I tend to forget about him a little bit. Uh,
It's easy to. He's kind of pale.
yeah, but that's kind of his sin. There's
Right.
the, you know, is he really living? I mean, obviously, just in the beginning of it, it's intro. I mean, and I've read it before, so I'm familiar with the story. But everybody else, all sin on display, naked and raw. And to do that well, that's why it's really good.
Hmm. What do you think that about? So, just kind of getting down to brass tacks with it, why do you think your impression of Alyosha is the way it is? Because he's not thematically consistent, or because he's not well drawn out, or
No, I think and I'm gonna forget the person's name now that was saying is like you may think you're not, but you're a Karamazov. It's in there. Like
you're
there,
a sensualist too.
yeah, you're a sensualist too. Yeah, like there's something repressed about him, and it makes him a little,
Mm.
at least at the beginning, a little forgettable.
I don't think he's definitely not a thin character. I think he's a very complex character, but he's
Yeah,
um thin in the world because all the other characters are so they demand so much attention, right? Like I mean even Ivan, who so far has had like very few lines. It's like he carries such weight with him. It's like that um
and everybody feels it.
yeah, I mean that back like when uh Fyodor is like keeps asking Ivan and Alyosha like if there's a god, and Alyosha's like yes, yes there is, and but Ivan's answer carries so much more weight when he's like no, there's not.
He's
Um,
like the Stavrogan of this.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Stavrogan given a stage and made even smarter.
yeah, 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 and less like more motivated. You know what I mean? Like more propulsive. Like Steph Rogan sort of floats because he I don't know. I don't I mean he
And but also like
yeah.
Raskolnikov, he's a writer, but he doesn't like later Stephen Dedalus believe in what he writes. He's writing these clever little things that supposedly nobody knows what he's up to. And Wes, just to kind of touch on the modernism, don't we have a narrator here that's talking about this? It's like pretty thin, but it's there, right? That this is not first
Yeah.
person. This is not, and this isn't, oh, right. So there is this is all being reported to us in two different installments too, right? Like now and 13 years ago. So
Yeah,
it's not a linear
there's a
narrative.
narrating voice, and that seems to be a non-disembodied, non-omniscient narrator. Uh, and there's also a thing, I don't know what to make of it, but it preceding the actual text, there's a pretty important dedication that includes a passage from the Gospel of John,
Mm.
and that'll get quoted later in the text. So there's some interesting like intermingling of reality and like levels of reality with the fiction of the story, right? Dedicated to the wife of Dostoevsky, who's also like his stenographer, who helps him like not get absorbed by his creditors around the time of the gambler, right? That kind of like saves him from some major debts, and puts up with all of his gambling, and a lot of other tribulations. And then this is his late work, it's his masterpiece. He writes it from the author, and so this is, you know, presumably to be like understood as being in Dostoevsky's voice, I guess, right? Whatever that means. And he talks about how he really wants the attempt that he made to make like a good hero in The Idiot to go better this time, at least like with the public or with the kind of overall, success of the work. He talks about the nature of his hero. He talks about the nature of the times. Um, and then we get into part one. And I think it's fair to say that there is some kind of difference between the author of the prefatory stuff there and then the like narrator of the actual story. But it seems to me that like all of his books, there's a lot of Dostoevsky in all of these characters, and particularly in the voice of the narrator. You can really feel him like crafting and shaping, and these kind of massive, figures, these massive characters, these kind of statuesque, you know, fugal movements, however you want to describe it, was like statue or music or what, but it's impressive. I mean, it's so good, and I don't think it's primarily because it's all about sin, but I am interested to know what were the questions that our mutual friend was asking, and if you could put a little more specificity behind those, we can maybe turn to some of that.
Well, I think we need to have him on at some point so we can ask them himself. But he was definitely thinking about the practical import of sin and how living a certain sort of life, and well, this is not going to sound radical in a non-philosophical context, but because this is also Dostoevsky's answer we've seen, but to live a Christian life is actually, he thought, a better life than a life of sin. Like let's say like a Roman patrician, pre-Augustan age, might live cheating on his wife and going to the vomitarium and then going to the gladiatorial games. George was pretty of the opinion that life could be improved upon, and so I think that's a big question that comes in here with these sensualists and these people who live in different ways. So I just wanted to try and say the names of some of these characters to sort of put the characters or put the players on the board. So we've got the three brothers who have this genealogy, which we get in a very sort of Old Testament fashion, later used also by Thomas Mann. But Alyosha and Ivan come from the same mother, who was a shrieker.
The shrieker, yeah.
Shrieker, which is itself a like hysteria, which shares its name with the uterus, same root, the uster in the huster in Greek. She apparently would kind of laugh, and then it's sort of epileptic, and would then have her the next day her fit. And Alyosha at one point actually mimics her in a way that makes his father observe him. But there's also a child that comes before them with a different mother, who is not a shrieker, and that is Mitya, Dmitri, right? And he is the one that has this major beef with his father. They're going after the same woman, Grushenka. Grushenka, who we first meet in the company of Katerina Ivanovna, who is the, I believe, fiance of Mitya, though he has been given to lustful desires, as his father has, to this Grushenka woman who lisps like Alcibiades and is curvy in a transfixing way. We also have this odd religious structure. So they're superiors and elders. We get a strange genealogy of that too, in the Russian realm, right? Like this was a small convention, but then it became a much larger convention, and here I think you can see a little bit of Dostoevsky's voice in talking about the power of this thing. That even this ridiculous character who, and then I haven't even mentioned the father, of course, who what is the name of the father? How's it dropped?
Fyodor Pavlovich.
Of course, and of course it's Fyodor, just like Dostoevsky's own voice, but he seems to be something of a figure of like mischief, of like Puck or Loki, almost archetypally so. So that when he's taken before the elder, he just can't behave. And this Pyotr character really, really is upset about this, a symbol of propriety. And then we also get this interaction between the elder and this mother and this girl with broken legs. And he tells some story, and that somehow heals in some way or another.
You've passed over somebody important.
Oh, okay, and please, no. This is
Well,
like
there's
cheddar cheese. There are holes or provolone. There are holes everywhere.
there's I think it's Swiss cheese, but yeah, there's another
You eat enough cheese, there are holes everywhere.
there's another son,
Another brother. Yeah.
brother.
Oh,
you're missing?
well, I mean, if you want to give away the goat, my friend, there. So, okay, at this point, what have we heard? It's very suggestive, and I think not. You don't need to be a reader of Nabokov to put it together. But there were these carousing young men who saw this woman who, though she was like 20 years old, she had this face that marked her as this translation describes her as an idiot, but somebody who's clearly mentally disabled. And one can tell from the look of her. And they asked in their drunken rabble way, can any of you even see her as a girl right now? And Fyodor apparently said, yes, I can. And the story goes, we hear from the narrator, that he went on with his carousing rabble. But what happened is that 5 or 6 months later, this girl was showing signs of pregnancy. And from her came this child, Smerdyakov. I believe she died in conception.
He jumped over his fence.
Oh, yeah, jumped over the fence to bear the child.
Yeah, and then died in the childbirth. Yeah.
And then Smerdyakov is kept on under the care of Grigory.
Yeah.
The housekeeper and his wife. And he's got this sort of Karamazov mind, but he's not really educated. There are all these books that he has read that are in like sort of Beauty and the Beast style in the manor, but the religious ones he has no time for. And he doesn't even smile when he reads certain books. So yes, right. So very suggestive that perhaps there is yet another one, or clearly there seems to be another one. But yeah, why do you bring up Smerdyakov? Just to note the hole in the Swiss cheese, or
well, I mean, I think he rounds out the brothers, and he the other three, it's like they were raised in an absence of a father, even though he could have been in their lives, whereas Smerdyakov is raised in his presence by a servant, as a servant.
He also has epilepsy.
Also has epilepsy, and there's another detail that I was just thinking about. He, I mean, like Smerdia in Russian is like shit, right? But of course, like Grigory says, oh, his father's name was, something related to that.
He's an excellent cook. He's learned how to cook.
Yeah. He also knows all the secrets, and they trust him. Which is kind of interesting.
Unlike
there's one more detail about him. He doesn't seem to embody any sin, but he's very, I mean, you already said, like, when he reads books, he has this disaffected affect, right? Like he's detached from everything. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, so, okay, I have an adjacent question I want to ask, but one thing I did want to ask about that, particularly because I'm with two educators and with somebody that could ostensibly be an educator at some point, is Smerdyakov sort of the result of somebody who is really smart but doesn't have any education, and the sort of problems that emerge because of that? You see him sort of so there's this family conversation. All the brothers, except for the one who wants to kill the dad, are at the table. One unbeknownst to the other two, and holding a theological discussion. And I think the mustard seed there does get mentioned. And Smerdyakov seems to have really interesting perception. He's allowed to sort of argue with Grigory, but then the father, Fyodor, starts to put questions to Alyosha and Ivan, one and then the other, as he has. I didn't keep count of his drinks, but I think he only wanted to have 2 or 3. Then he has 4 or 5, and it's on those 4th and 5th ones that he really starts to go downhill, right? Like,
And then this is the scene right before Mitchik busts in and
right before,
up,
right?
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
yes, exactly. And he's like, "Is there a God? You know, is there immortality? Oh, there's immortality in God, Alyosha? No, there's not." Ivan gives some clever remark at one point. He's like, "Well, there must be the devil if there's no God." And then Fyodor says, "But is there a devil?" And Ivan says, "No, there's no one of those either." And so, but I wanted to ask, I wanted to try and ask an annoying St. John's question. And I think just because I think this is the sort of question that Babcock might be able to tear apart. But in this text, and this is not counting all the great characters that we have so far, but do we have Prince Mishkin alongside Stavrogan?
I mean, in like obviously the answer would be in Alyosha and Ivan.
Yes. Right? Yeah. And then maybe Raskolnikov with Mitya. I don't know. An older.
I don't think I would go that far, but yeah.
No, I don't want to try and extend it before even settling it. But what do you think about, like, are those characters now developed to their core and now put in contrast to each other? One who's utterly faithful and one who's so intellectual that he's utterly faithless. And since we're all readers of Faust and Thomas Mann, Mephistopheles was already mentioned in the text.
There's a lot of references here, and I think it's fair to see some development of the themes from earlier books too. But there's a deep, interest in like what is Russia, and that certainly carries through all of what makes the Russianness of the faith in particular, right? What's distinct about that? And we've heard in other books about the kind of institution of elders, but it's much more prevalent here. It's in that kind of cut out chapter from Demons, right? The one where he goes to the elder to confess Stavrogin's confession, right? And that's so that it's like implied, and then there's the part where the carousing kids like go and mess with the one elder who turns out to not be like all that holy after all. Maybe he's kind of crude at least. Anyway, there's like some very irreverent bits there, but here we get the other perspective really given its due, right? That makes for this wonderful kind of debate between Alyosha and Ivan and all that they kind of represent as the book develops. With Mitya, I mean, propelling the plot quite a bit, so we get that kind of plot power that we love so much in Crime and Punishment, and that at times is like kind of not there in some of the other,
Right.
some other great points. It's kind of like slow and kind of like what's even happening in this book and some of the other ones. So yeah, it's kind of like the fusion of all of the character, the lines of development, the themes. It's very much the mature version of all of that, and it's tough because you want to read it, but you also want to like to really appreciate. You kind of have to like read the other ones, and so maybe there's like a kind of cyclical reading that makes it. That's the best way to go about it. And to your point, I wanted to mention the thing about, the uneducated, the danger of that. It does seem like kind of the flip side of his fascination with the educated class of the 2 generations, particularly in Demons, right? That's like the focus there. And so now he's kind of turning that on its head. Like, what about when there's this incredible potential and it's profoundly, abandoned and not educated, and what happens then when it interacts with the educated brothers, that whole force, that whole kind of Karamazov streak, right? Under all of these little variations of upbringing.
Like this would be in Fyodor, in Smerdyakov. Like, who would be these?
Potentially both, but particularly Smerdyakov, I guess. He's so neglected, we don't get that much about Fyodor's upbringing, I don't think, for all that we hear a ton about his kids early on.
I mean, he seems to just be pure sensualist and id, right? Like,
Party animal. Yeah, he's the
yeah,
fun. He's the life of the party. Even at
yeah,
the monastery, he's
yeah,
carousing.
yeah,
Businessman too, though.
yeah.
Our
Successful
practice.
businessman. Yeah.
Savvy. He's a savvy businessman.
Not as savvy as Mitya seems to think he is. And so this is part of the problem too. So the father and the son love the same woman, but also the son thinks the father has made much more money than he has based on an initial capital given to him from the mother of Mitchell. So he thinks he has a claim, a sort of usurious claim to part of the proceeds that do not apparently exist. Fyodor figured this out because apparently part of his sort of falsifiers, deceivers ethos is he can read people really well, and he knows that Ivan wants to be, or excuse me, Mitya wants to be more than he is for less than he wants to pay. And so he's been able to sort of string him along, and even starts to mention that a little bit. But so there's this huge financial sort of incentive behind, or tension between the father and the son, as well as a sort of lustful one. And so there is even more than, I would say, like a Shakespearean, like Hamlet had one major reason to want his uncle dead, and possibly a sub reason that he was in love with his mother too, if you want to be really Freudian with it. But this guy has two major reasons for what he wants to do. And so I just wonder about that.
Well, I mean, to the question about sin, it does seem like we're getting a lot of this backstory in order to be able to construct some kind of, plausible motivation for the stuff that's seems imminent, and that is being set in motion. And the kind of freedom of will and the dynamism of the Karamazov soul, right, seems really important for that. And so that's where I come back to uh, Alyosha and like what's up with him. He seems to really want to give away his freedom, right? He wants to enter the monastery. He wants to be in a way like spared, like the hustle, bustle, the hurly burly of the times. And and that seems to be, if there, I mean, if there's a uh, an aspect to him that's really interesting at this stage, it's just that, right? Like what is motivating that? What is behind that? And all we kind of get is like this idea that, yeah, it has something to do with his mother, right? And this kind of early memory of her having one of her episodes, right? And how that impacted him from a very early age. So there is a kind of like a psychological thing that is being explored there. And we don't get any corresponding kind of experience mentioned for the others, although with Mitya, yeah, there's like this thing about the inheritance. With Ivan, there seems to be a kind of intellectual ambition or even hubris. Um, and Smerdyakov, right? Like the whole idea of his existence could be a motivation, right? It could be enough to lead him to do all manner of things. Uh, we'll find out, I guess. But yeah, that's where I find Alyosha very interesting. Actually, is this idea that where the others are kind of defined by their motivations, and the power of their will. Um, he seems to be precisely trying to be freed from that.
by giving it up
Mhm.
to God.
In the institution of the elder, he would just do what they tell him, right? He
Yeah.
does it.
The obedience.
Yeah.
Mhm. He has obedience.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, that you have to do the obedience that the person tells you. So you have to go to some place and nobody, even a patriarch, can let you out from it. But sorry, I didn't complete my point, but I should have said those two motivations were, or so Mitya has two major motivations for potentially killing his father. Wes, you just brought up that Ivan might also have some strange Raskolnikov-esque intellectual reason to want to set things in motion just to see if they can be done.
Yes. It's
And
kind of a
also,
test. Yeah.
and Smerdjakov, if he ever found out about his mother, would have a good dang reason to want his father dead, and also, yeah, could just resent his existence so much. And so it's
But
almost,
nihilistically, yeah.
yeah, it's almost like all these characters have reasons, have designs on Fyodor.
And
One can see the drapes, the darkness rising around him, except for ultimately, and he seems to recognize this, Alyosha, because he says after the dinner that Ivan scares him even more than Mitya. And he's like, your eyes shine, but Ivan glowers at me. And he says, and he seems to really love Alyosha. Even though he does hurt him pretty badly when he talks about his mother. But right, so all of these characters have what seem like Shakespearean level and even extra Shakespearean level motivations to wish harm on Fyodor and maybe even Alyosha, but he doesn't, and he doesn't even take sort of the Christian tact that he might save his soul by keeping him from doing greater evil.
Well, but the elders do say to him, like, your place is in the world still. Like
the elder tells him explicitly,
yeah.
And he has to go deal with some serious pain too.
Yeah, like I don't think it's right to say that. I mean, he wants to avoid the world because he's trying to run away from it, but
he gets sent right back into it.
Yeah.
His motivation is fear. Like, he doesn't want to become who he is in his family, or who he may be destined to be.
So
he's one of them, and he doesn't want to be.
I think that's totally true, and I think a lot of our generation has tried to move away from who they are and who their parents are through various ways of change, whether it be like joining like a CrossFit or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like, something, you become something, you've transformed beyond your roots. But in the conversation I had before this with our mutual friend George, he was talking about Origen, a church father who was known to have castrated himself, and he did that in an act of piety in order to get lust away from him. But ultimately, he was, even though he is considered a church father, he was rendered, he was actually excommunicated because that solution was considered sort of anti-Christian. Rather than a spiritual transformation, it's way too much of a physical transformation, and it's just getting rid of the thing that causes the emotion rather than mastering it truly. And so one imagines that the elder sees this with Alyosha, that he's trying to cut off the member rather than learning to deal with the feeling and mastering it.
It's also like trying to cut off part of yourself. I mean,
that's why I say member.
No, yeah. I mean,
yeah, right, to cut off your family, and I don't think that is. I mean, I think that is to some extent that's kind of like the divorce of our age, right? Like the like cutting off of the family. This is a different age, of course, from Dostoevsky, but we don't necessarily understand that it might be like cutting off an arm. But Alyosha seems to want to cut off this gangrenous arm. But it seems like it might not be his arm, that it might be his soul, that he's a sensualist too, he admits, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to put this in sort of a Johnny, but also sort of a conventional university way, how the hell does that work? He's trying to be holy, but he's trying to be a sensualist. I know Martin Luther tried to make the point against the Catholics that desire is good because it helps reproduction. But how is Alyosha a sensualist? And is this some Hegelian sublimation of sensuality?
Well, when he talks to Katya, right? He talks about like how beautiful she is, and he admits to her. He says, "I have the desire in me too."
And he sees Grushenka. He's transfixed by her. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's I think it's just in him. But I think part of the whole point is that it's in all of us. Like these brothers are all of us, right? Like they're not they're particular, but they're not too particular.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
He
the
feels shame. He feels shame, right? At the dinner with the elders, right? Whereas someone who would be an anti-essentialist is detached from this and can sort of transcend those moments. It's kind of like um, the people in our life who it's like, I'm not going to let them bother me. I'm not going to let them bother me. Or perfect embodiment is the one character here who Fyodor goes after. His
Piotr.
brother-in-law. Yeah, his brother-in-law, Piotr. Exactly right. It's like he gets his goat exactly the way that he says he's not going to let him do it every single time. And I think Alyosha's kind of the same.
It's like the elder sees where the story is going to be, and he wants to inject. This is my pet theory right now, and he wants to inject God into it. And the only way to do that is through Alyosha, not Mitya, not Grishenka, not Fyodor, certainly not Ivan. Alyosha's place is not away from the action; it's in the action. He has an active role to play in the world. He can do good, and I think this shows wisdom of the elder as well. It would be sort of like Jonah and the whale, and he would be running away from his destiny to play an important role in a drama. But just because I know you're fond of making this connection with the book you teach, Crime and Punishment, and Hamlet, it's like he is sending Alyosha into a Hamlet plot.
Mm-hmm.
He's not Hamlet,
He's Horatio.
but he's part of it.
Yeah.
And well, what can you do?
Well, I mean, in some ways, he's a bit of a Horatio, right? Like, I need you to go and try to keep some semblance of sanity so that we can record this story and learn from it in some way.
Okay, sorry. I was just gonna say George kept asking, what is an angel? Does an angel have to be like a spiritual thing? And one thing, angel in Greek, angelos, means messenger. One thing this guy does is he carries
messages, yeah.
Carries messages.
The other thing that Alyosha does is okay, so is it Fyodor? One of the guys criticizes the Jesuits, but he says, "Oh, he's like a Russian Jesuit." I think it's Fyodor talking about the elder, right? And so what's interesting is that the Jesuits have they occupy both of these things. They have obedience, but they also go out into the world, right? They are not cloistered. So it's almost like that's kind of what Alyosha is doing. It's like you need to be obedient, but your job is not
right
here. The only difference I would say is that Alyosha is not educated enough to be a Jesuit, right? Like, I mean, Ivan is more in that realm, but yeah, it's interesting.
But he just needs his instincts for this mission.
Yeah, true. That's true. Well, he's been educated enough within his own family, right? Yeah. What I'm finding interesting in Justin, like you said, you've read this book before, from when I read this book before, is all of my notes in this part are in reference to future, like it's like multiple, it's like here's page 451, page 266, page 700, like it's just constantly referencing things in the future. So I'm feeling a little bit like in reading it, I enjoyed it, but I'm not that I don't have anything to say about it, but I'm feeling like I feel like we need more of the story in order to get some meat on what's going to happen. Like there's got to be a little bit more to taste.
Yeah, part one's, I mean, it feels like it's mostly set up, even though there's stuff happening. It's set up. And maybe it's because just at the beginning they're saying like, okay, now we're going to go back. Okay, so
yeah.
We know we're leading up to something. We just don't know the particulars of how we got there.
I am like there's a lot of dead children in part one. Like there's the ladies that the elder goes and talks to, and there's this like really profound sadness. I was kind of thinking about that. Is that like really what this like when you say it's about sin? I'm not sure that's quite right. It might be more accurate to say it's about like Well, it's about sin because these are the ways that people deal with human suffering. Like the one lady, she says, like, my husband's a drunk and he beats me, but it's like that's his way of dealing with suffering. It's not a healthy way, but it's how he's trying to manage it. You know, he just gets drunk every day. Um, I don't really know what suffering Fyodor is trying to manage, but by just indulging in every desire that he has. But maybe it's just the suffering of being alive.
Yeah.
What about this poem that Mitya reads to this Schiller poem? Is it Schiller?
What page you got?
105.
Ode to Joy, right?
Yeah. Ein die Freude, yes, hymn to joy. Yeah, ode to joy. Yeah, yes. Yeah.
You know, it's Schiller, it's Beethoven, it's, the glory of the Western civilization that somehow is not able to redeem suffering humanity, right? It's like he has this great ecstasy, he has this great feeling of joy and wonder, and it transcends logic because contradictions live together, right? It's this wonderful Hegelian thing that happened, uh, but he's still kind of a scoundrel, right? He's still Karamazov, and um, I think this is, yeah, it makes an interesting counterpart to the women, right? The suffering women, because they come to find solace, find meaning, find some sort of way to like structure their lives, right? And keep going. And then Mitya, for his part, he kind of squanders his inheritance, right? What's given to him because he thinks there's more, right? Which is foolish. He's got every advantage, and yet he's still in this terrible conflict with his father. Um, but he has this bubbling up of poetry in him too, and so I mean I think it's an element of um, like getting a grip on the kinds of extremes of human experience, right? From suffering, from losing a child, right? Which Dostoevsky experienced. And I think it's the name of his own kid who died that he puts in the story, Alexei, if I'm not mistaken. And then on the other end, this kind of ecstasy, this poetic, creative, overflowing feeling, um, that extreme that Mitya has here. And and it also suggests that we're gonna get this kind of thing from each of the brothers eventually, and then maybe in at various times they'll even do another one, right? I think Mitya gets another few chapters clustered late in the book that kind of bookends this whole thing. Um, so it's a kind of, again, like a kind of structuring element that's established of like, let's zoom in on this character for a while and like
Mhm.
really dive into his voice or her voice, right? The women, the elders, Mitya, and so on and so on and so on. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a powerful way of him throwing in a variation on that theme of what's Europe, what's Russia, what's up with modern humanity. Um, it, yeah, poetry is not enough. That's my main takeaway from this.
I just thought of a question. I'm not 100% sure how it's relating to everything at the moment, but can you be creative if you're not a sensualist? And
Mm.
like,
Yeah, that same energy seems to be able to
right,
express itself in either. Yeah, yeah, sure.
Ivan's using it. He's writing, even if it's hard to tell. You got this poem. I guess we could say Fyodor's creating in some way, but it's kind of a degenerate. The energy is mismanaged, right? Like he's creating kids. I guess we could say
Creating
that.
life, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much. Very much.
Especially in the midst of all these other
Back
children
on.
dying, his are living, and but maybe it's because you mentioned Dostoevsky kind of putting himself into it, where he has the child that died, but he also has this overflowing creativity. It's you know I'm sure he would call himself a sensualist.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Think about
So
the gambling, right? I mean,
Yeah. And the drinking.
it's right
and
into
the
these
drinking.
relationships and interactions, you'd have to be like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
what is Alyosha creating? He's not. He's stunted, right? He's just
But he says he's on. He says the steps are all the same. You're just farther up the ladder than me.
Yeah.
I mean, like Go ahead, Alex.
I was stunted, not as far, but I have a similar question to your question, Justin, but in an octagonist sort of angle. I put it like how Wes put it. What is up with reality when you have this strange religious figure in a room that's with this semi legal dispute to judge the morality of it with this ridiculous father who is, so let's just kind of lay it out a little bit. He's making a farce of the situation, but his claim is that the whole situation was a farce in the first place because there's this guy who calls himself father, who obviously has no children, in front of this guy who is a father, who has 3 children, who's going to try, and maybe more, 4, and is going to try and tell him things that, like his own book, tell him again, like go forward and multiply. He didn't do that.
Yeah.
You can make a missionary sort of effort at that, I think, and there are different ways of doing that.
I mean, this is the irony of like priests teaching marriage classes, right? It's like
right, but like from a sensualist's perspective,
yeah.
His perspective is this whole thing is a farce because you're preaching this thing that's not even real, and even and calling yourself a thing that I am and you are not, and I'm actually paying for you through various taxes,
right?
And actually, even though I'm considered a fraud because of the way in which I make my money, you are clearly a fraud in the way that you make your money and so I think there is supposed to be this crazy modernist parallel drawn between them, that Fyodor is the modernist.
Sure. Yeah.
And he's showing that the emperor has no clothes, but that doesn't mean that the emperor doesn't exist. And so, because obviously we know that part of Dostoevsky's answer to the sort of existential and social question of life is a Christian answer. I think he's providing this powerful argument and contrast against it. And when one reads it, I think at first you're like, Fyodor, please, have some dignity. But he's like, the wool has been pulled over your eyes, my friends, that you think any of this has dignity.
I do think that there's a exploration of what God is in the world, that when it's
shining eyes of Alyosha. No, I'm just
when it's understood to be something like what the women who come wanting solace want. It's not to say that it's a bad thing that the Zosimov provides them with comfort, but it's not. I don't want to say not real, but it's like not a mature like it's not enough for all of human suffering. You know what I mean? And I think that I think Dostoevsky would say you need to. There's a much more complex thing going on, but it's also just as simple. And I think that might be the wisdom of the elder.
Yeah, it's simple but complex. Like, I mean, like that argument of I'm actually a father, you're not. Well, he's not called a father because he's supposed to bear children. Like it's way more complex than that, even though it's a simple title, right?
Yeah. But it is also as simple as.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It is a farce, so he's going to be farcical in response to it. Was that just meta-farcical? Like, what's his end goal here? Like, what is he actually providing?
Well, so here's another thing is that I've been thinking about Alyosha being creative. Mitya says that the sensualists are trying to solve riddles in the the Confession of the Ardent Heart, chapter 4 of that final part, and then the chapter with the poem. And he says, this game of solving riddles is only amused by my insect sensuality. Oh. And then but Mitch is troubled by the fact that there's too many riddles oppressing man on earth. And he says you can't solve them without getting your feet wet, right? Like we all start at the Madonna, but we always end at Sodom. And so I think that might be getting at that very idea of like the idea of God is both simple and complex at the same time. And I think Fyodor is trying to call the bluff, right? To use gambling terms. I mean, what does he say? He says, well, there must not be devils because there must not be hooks. There's got to be hooks in hell if the devil's going to exist. It's like, how do you, like, you're going to try to hold some sort of strange logic chain on this one little detail that some priest told you? I don't, like, it makes no sense.
Yeah. No, yeah, those hooks, they seem really important to him. And so I'm hesitant to say that it's purely farcical. Um, it does seem like he has some genuine questions that he's asking as much as he does delight in making everyone around him kind of miserable. Uh, the the quote that he has there about the hooks too is kind of a twist on Voltaire, right? Who said like if there were no God, we would have to invent him, something to that extent, right?
Yeah, he has
this,
a line about that. He says, "I want to meet the guy who invented God," right? And
yeah,
and
He
and he
wants to
says,
punish him.
yeah,
He
and
punishes him.
if there's no God, then the elders need to be held accountable real quick. Like we got to figure out where all that money is. All right, sorry, Wes, go ahead.
but this is, I mean, it's precisely the kind of question that someone who takes it seriously would have, I think. Like, so what is the nature of this energy, right? Which can manifest itself in all these various ways. What is the source of that? What what sets apart the people who are able to lead a good life, if that's even possible, from those who are depraved, degenerate, right? I.e. Fyodor. And and it's yeah, it's an incredible hook for the story too, in that sense, right? Of like pulling you in. Um, his character is by far the most, immediately uh, magnetic. There we
Magnetic.
go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, like Mitya, who's probably gotten the most lines other than Fyodor. It's like there's a part of me that's like enough. But every time Fyodor's on, it's like I want more of it, you know?
yeah, what's he gonna do next? What's he gonna say next?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
It is an interesting study in like the Dunning-Kruger effect, though, too. Since he is a defrauder, he sees everyone else as a form of defrauder. And so he can't see the nuance to a shepherd and how people actually pay for him to exist in sort of an original Old Testament way. He sees it like a defrauder would. He's like, that's a good scheme to get other people to pay for you to wear these clothes and then call you this thing that you're not. But just because you understand that this is very similar to saying the emperor has no clothes but still exists. Just because one says that a movie is fictional doesn't mean that it doesn't move people and that they won't still pay in order to go see it.
Yeah.
To say that just the thing itself is artificial or is human made is not saying that much, because such things often still have tremendous value. It doesn't matter that it's not real in the same way as a tree is. Things can be real in different ways, and same, law has a different existence from a tree, but very much a very real, the laws of our states and counties and nations and religions have very strong binding effects on us. And so he refuses to see those lows.
Yeah.
Because his response to life has been an extreme one. If I can't understand the riddles, and so not only does he say everything on earth is a riddle, and then the next page, like you said, 108, Babcock, too many riddles oppress the earth. He's like, well, F it. If I can't understand it, then it can't be understood. Then I'll just give myself to pleasure. Then right? Like it's like that is an immediate thing that I can feel, that I understand because of its immediacy. So I can get drunk, I can engage in coitus. These things are real, and But I think, Justin, what you were touching on with the nuance of it, it's like, yeah, they're real, but they're base. They don't last very long. There are other pleasures that even if you wanted to be a hedonist rather than simply a sensualist, maybe health and living 80 years rather than 60 years is part of your calculation or something like that. But he doesn't admit of that sort of thing. He's going to have his cognac and he's going to tell you to stop him and then not let you. So they can get one over on you, so that he can get one over on everyone, because he's ultimately got one over on everybody in the world. And in his game, that's winning.
Yeah. I kind of in response to a couple of those things. Is that saying is like, you often accuse people of what you're doing yourself, but don't see.
Yeah, that's like the Christian way is what you see the mote in somebody else's, the speck in somebody else's eye.
Yeah.
That was it. But then also, these artificial things like emotions are not tangible. We feel them. And I could have an extreme emotion to something I've seen and completely misunderstood the context of.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm the only one misunderstanding it. But if I then demand that my emotion be the reality for everyone else, I'm the kook.
Well, that's the idea of punked, right? When people are in on a prank.
Yeah. You also, Justin, you make me think about we talk about students as being emotional terrorists, adolescents as being emotional terrorists, like they're trying to control you with emotions.
Yeah,
right. And in a sense, that's not real, and it may be wrong depending on what's going on, but it has a real effect. Like it has a value, at least to you, and those that care about you will care about your feelings. Hopefully they'll correct you if you're wrong, but there's an irony there of someone calling all that stuff out, and you're like, you don't even see yourself and how tiny you actually might be.
And I think that's what he wants to do to everybody. I think he wants everybody to see the ridiculousness of existence. He wants to expose everybody's position, whether it be Zosima's or Ivan's or Alyosha's, so in such a way as to make them feel as if they have misunderstood the nature of existence, and the thing that gave them meaning no longer does. And see that light go out of their eyes.
Okay, Alex, what you're making me think is that it's like he's warning all of these postmodern authors, like, sure, you can play these games if you want. You can come up with these little puzzling works of art, quote unquote art, if you want to call them that. But there's nothing at the bottom of it. You're just a sensualist. You're just,
because they're calling out the structure and the fiction of it.
Yeah.
And not providing the magic that comes through.
Not even, yes. I mean, yes. Yeah. I don't want to dismiss what you're saying as magic, because I think that's valid.
No, but the substance.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I say
yes.
The thing itself, the epiphenomenon,
Yeah. Which is go ahead.
The forest and the trees. They're describing the trees, but missing the bigger picture.
Yeah, I mean, I think another way of like, as another version of what Alex just said about, like, the emperor has no clothes, but he's still the emperor. Like, the Wizard of Oz might not actually have magic, but he is still a wizard. Like, he still puts on
right. He puts on a show. That's right.
And until the curtain is pulled back, he has magic powers. But Dostoevsky would say that there's still, even after he's exposed, there's still something happening, right? It's the simple and complex at the same time.
And to expose him is not to. It might.
Exposure is not to. It doesn't devalue him or
it might depotentiate him specifically, but it doesn't do anything for the power of the mechanism itself.
Yeah.
So if you expose one wizard who, he is the organizing force for a society against a wicked witch, right?
Yeah.
He had this huge legitimizing force.
Yeah.
If he gets exposed as illegitimate, you can still build up a necessary framework and put whatever clown you want there, and then produce, maybe not whatever clown, maybe it needs to be a good actor, but then produce the same effect. Just because you render one part of a powerful process ridiculous, or like Tolstoy says, these great people are just part of these historical processes, they don't even matter really, but that process is real.
Yeah,
it's the person that doesn't matter for Tolstoy.
Yeah.
And I think also for Dostoevsky here, it's like Well, again, if you focus on any particular aspect of like of a process, it might seem ridiculous. Like, what is a bat alone? Well, it's like, well, you need to think about a bat in the context of baseball. You need to think about this hat that this guy is wearing, or this power he has, in the context of the hierarchy or the system that he is a part of. And then what does that system provide? And that's what he's like, well, that's very complicated. Absolutely not. Much better just to say that I can't figure it out. And therefore, why pursue it at all? I mean, I think it is a childish but powerful way of looking at, and a way that I think a lot of people do look at things. It's like, if it's not A, it's fucking B. You know?
I mean, it's also another retort against revolutionaries, right? It's like, you want to rebel against something. Like, so we're just gonna have chaos then? Because this is chaos, right? When you kill the father and all these brothers are just running all over the place. Or demons is maybe a more accurate depiction of anarchy, right?
Right now, he's not a stooge, I think, about any of these sort of social or traditional processes or institutions like religions or polities, but and even institutions like the serfs. He does not seem to be 100. He does not just say free the serfs. He seems to be pro freeing the serfs, but he also seems to think there are going to be some problems, and generally gives vent to the complexities of the situation and the ensuing negative externalities.
Okay, well, here's an example to put these two ideas together, is that Ivan says there's no God, Alyosha says there is a God. Neither one is deemed correct. They just move on from the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think both are correct. Like, there is no God in the, let's just say from Fyodor's perspective, there is no God as a political entity that is developing this power dynamic and creating a fear structure for people to behave in a certain way. But there is a God in that something like, nothing comes from nothing, right? There has to be something that has created all of this, and there is some sort of spiritual force that is connecting the universe together in some way, right? So it's like, both things could potentially be true, in that one is merely a tool used by certain people for political or power dynamics, whereas the other is an actual theological, spiritual force of some kind.
Kind of like saying, I appreciate the theology, but I don't like the institution.
Sure, that's another way of saying that. Yeah. Like, the institution of the elders is ridiculous, but there's also a God. And if you act badly in this world, bad things are going to happen to you in some form, right? I mean, it's kind of like another way of thinking about, Jesus saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Well, the kingdom of hell is also at hand. If you're going to go around being a sensualist, your life is not going to be very happy.
So I think you're hitting the nail on the head, because I've just seen what I imagine as a nail, Babcock, and it strikes me as very Westworld. If you see that all the world is a riddle, one logical solution to the problem of life is to treat life like a riddle, and to continue to try and solve it, and to get deeper into it, and to try and you might find more and more meaning. Because it seems like Fyodor's incorrect or ultimately invalid perspective is that if one cannot understand the riddle of everything, then one should not ask the question at all. But another, I think, more valid response is, if one cannot understand everything, well, one should first test whether that's true and try and understand everything. But perhaps there is meaning to life in thinking for oneself, in trying to discover what the riddle is. That perhaps if you put like just basic traditionalism and religiousism on one hand, sensualism on the other, as both just like sort of answers, pre-existing answers to the question of what is the nature or what is the purpose of life. But parsing at the riddle for yourself, that strikes me as actually tough. And as maybe what's getting pointed at here, why do we have all of these differing perspectives put in front of us and treated as equally valid? Because this is going to be a problem of interpretation, not just a problem of reading, right? We're going to have to interpret for ourselves who's right, who's living the best life. Is it Alyosha? Is it Ivan? I always wanted it to be Ivan, but then it doesn't seem to work out for Ivan. And I don't really like Alyosha. I think he's sort of pale like you do, Justin, but then things kind of work out for him. So,
Just to be clear, I like him. I just kind of forget about him.
yeah. It's like
You just don't want to be him.
That's probably true. Yeah.
he's like those orange and black candies at the bottom of my Halloween bag that don't have any writing on them. I'm like, they're there. I don't think I'm gonna eat them. No,
Do you like
more
do
than
you
that.
like Prince Michigan better, or do you like Alyosha better?
So far, well, Michigan got all that screen time, all that page time, as it were, all that page space early on. And Alyosha has all these, he's on an all-star cast, so he's sharing time with a lot of heavy hitters.
He's also not as dumb as Michigan. Like Michigan had that, like, you're charmingly stupid.
He hasn't really spoken his mind that much yet. Michigan was constant.
Yeah.
I think my biggest problem with Alyosha is he leads his life he's led by fear. Like that's like the underlining thing in him, and I find that off-putting.
I like all the brothers less than I did before. I don't know. I don't dislike him, but I'm not. When I was 29 or 30 reading this book, I was much more like Ivan is the guy. Ivan is it. And now I'm a little less Ivan, Team Ivan.
I had more sympathy for Dmitri.
What's that, Justin?
I had more sympathy for Dmitri the first time I read it.
Oh yeah. He comes across as much more of a dick this time.
I kind of saw who he was, but at the same time, I was like, I kind of feel bad for him. I feel like he is getting cheated. I'm not so sure.
I did until the end. I had forgotten this whole Grushenka Katya plot. Like all three of them, it's like I just want to dropkick all of them. They're all terrible. Alex, you were saying something.
I forgot what I was going to say, but it's probably for the best. I think we've put a pretty good effort in this first reading late into the evening, especially for you, Babcock. So let me see. We finished the first 3 books in the first part. There are 4 parts in total. Would trying part 2 is about 160 pages from the look of it. Oh yeah, I guess I should say, I'm available next week, but then I'm not available for 2 weeks. So we would either need to meet in like 4 weeks or 1 week, or 1 week and then 4 weeks. I know we usually meet every 2 weeks, but
I'd personally like to do 4. I have a lot going on this month.
Okay, so we then still just part 2.
Yeah, I think just part 2.
I said this month. I meant October. I have a lot going on in October.
Are you, Justin? Are you like out for all of October? You think?
I'm sorry.
Are you out for all of October?
No, not at all. Just the beginning.
I see.
I have a few family birthdays and a couple of events I have to go to.